All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, or perhaps good day, good morning, whenever it is. Welcome. As you can hear, my voice is still struggling. Got a bit of a cold working, and then that PAX Unplugged recovery. Still recovering. This is part 2 of our look at Twilight 2000, still in the player's manual. I don't have any notes. Or I guess tomorrow I do have Alyssa Faden coming on tomorrow night for our monthly chat. And then I might have my game tonight. My home game might be tonight. We'll see if that actually pans out or not. We've had a hard time scheduling lately. Just everyone's had stuff going on in the holidays and all that jazz. We'll see how that works out. So if that happens, then I'll get to do like a recap and kind of chat video about that soon. But for now, we will console ourselves with Twilight 2000. We're now on weapons, vehicles, and gear. Not going to spend too much time on this. Just kind of check out what we've got. Hey, Lincoln. Lincoln says, good afternoon. I'm also sick. Yep. I'm sure it's going around. My wife had it. My daughter had it. Now I've got it. Actually, I think I've kind of had it the best of all of us in terms of level of sickness. But you know, it's my throat, which affects my voice, and of course, I'm the only one who's doing these kind of streaming. I'm the only one that really has to concern themselves with voice work. So if I feel like it's hitting me the hardest in terms of public exposure to my illness. Other than that, I'm all right. All right, let's take a look at this gear here. Equipment is a key element of Twilight 2000. Without weapons, vehicles, and other gear, you won't last very long. Keeping your gear in working order can be the difference between life and death. This chapter describes a wide range of equipment as well as rules for trade and maintenance. I'm all down with trade and maintenance. Trade, let's see, we got here. So we've got bartering, supply. So bartering is when bartering with an NPC for an item. The referee first sets an asking price in bullets or other goods that they deem reasonable. It can then be higher or lower than the list price depending on the situation. Assume that everyone will always try to get as much as they possibly can from every transaction. Next, if you want to negotiate the price down, roll an opposed persuasion roll. If you succeed, the price is reduced by 10% for each kind of bullseye rolled. You're paying with something other than bullets, you'll need to make a judgment call on what that result means. The referee has final say. And then I'm guessing is selling is much the same. The other element here is supply. Often more important than the price is the question of whether an item is available at all. Many goods are rare, and the PCs can't expect to find everything they're looking for in any little settlement they come across. Each type of gear has a supply rating, which indicates the probability that your characters can find this type of item offered for trade in a typical settlement or scenario location. I kind of like this. So you have, stuff that's common, stuff that's scarce, stuff that's rare. And then we have a table that gives us some supply and quantities. Hey, Elfbait. Happy to have you. And now we also have a reliability score. When you have established that a weapon or vehicle is available, the referee rolls a d6 on the table below to determine the reliability rating of the item. Apply the modifier to the listed reliability. All right, so you would roll and then see if it's reliable or not. So you could get something and then it'd be unreliable, or you could get something and wow, that's good. Good old-fashioned craftsmanship. And why is... There we go. Hey, walking the path. Welcome. Velkommen. Here we get to some of the interesting things, or at least interesting to me. So we get gear damage and repairs. Gear can suffer damage and be broken through use or attacks. As explained in some other chapters, each piece of gear has a reliability rating. We just went over that. Or we just went over some modifiers to reliability. Each point of damage from pushing rolls or outside force will reduce the reliability rating by 1. When it reaches 0, the item is broken and can no longer be used. A typical piece of sturdy mechanical gear in good condition has a reliability rating of 5. but delicate or badly built gear could start with a lower rating. If no reliability is listed, assume it to be 5. 5 is good. You don't want to hit 0 because then it's broken. Repairs. Repairing a broken item typically requires a shift of work, tools of some sort, a tech roll, and a spare part of the relevant type: vehicle, weapon, electronic, or general. I kind of like the idea of sort of abstracting these things for repairs into sort of types. It'd be fun, I'm sure, for some people, maybe for gearheads or whatnot, to get into exactly what you need to fix on your truck or tank to get it to go. But just to kind of make it something that's more gameable to more people, especially if you're like me and don't really know anything about or anything beyond, the very basics about cars and whatnot. Just saying, I got to find vehicle types to repair vehicles, weapon spare parts, rather. Vehicle spare parts to repair vehicles, and weapon spare parts or electronic parts. Just kind of makes sense. And of course, you can always elaborate in the fiction if you want to get into exactly what you need. But I think that's a cool way to both demonstrate how things work in this game in terms of everybody's scrapping everything and everybody's scrounging, but then not getting too far into the weeds on details that might not be helpful. It's very easy to run afoul in too many details if you're not up for it, or really if the whole table's not up for it. I think oftentimes one person, aka the DM, usually is up for going into an insane amount of details on somebody and no one else cares, but the players are stuck with it because the DM is super intrigued by it. All right, so let's see. Okay, I see. So you would roll. I'm trying to remember where I split off. So repairs. Repairing a broken item typically requires a shift of work. We already covered that. Tools of some sort, we got that. A tech roll and a spare part. If none of the others apply, or general. Okay, so if it's something outside of all those vehicles, weapons, or electronics, we can talk about a general spare part. If your roll is successful, the spare part is consumed. The piece of gear is restored to working order with a reliability equal to the number of bullseyes you roll. The reliability can never go above the listed value. If the roll fails, you can try again in the next shift. So you can keep trying. Much like anything where you can keep trying, you want to make sure that if you're going to force them to roll and do this stuff, right, there's got to be some kind of time pressure. So in this case, we know the one pressure they're absolutely giving us is that you're using up shifts. So you might be somewhere that you don't really want to be, may not be in a safe place, and you're trying to repair your Jeep. Every time you are spending those shifts repairing, it's time that you're not spent hiding, getting away, preparing for an ambush, whatever, right? Restoring a reduced reliability rating before the item is broken also requires a shift to repairs and a tech roll, but no spare part is needed. The reliability is increased by 1 for every bullseye rolled up to its value. So you can do essentially maintenance. And if you can keep up on your maintenance, take it in for its oil change at 10,000 miles, you can avoid having to go to the costly process of repairs. And I like it because it uses the same mechanics, only this time you just don't need the spare part. You can just do it with what you've got. Scavenging for parts. You can scavenge spare parts from items that you come across. If you spend a shift scavenging parts from one or several pieces of gear and make a tech roll, you manage to extract a number of spare parts of the corresponding type: weapons, vehicle, electronics, or general, if none of the others apply, equal to the number of bullseyes you roll. I'm guessing, I don't know. I'm using bullseye because that's a symbol they're showing here in the book. I don't know if that's I'll have to go back and pick up the dice. If that's just a success, I'm just going to keep calling it bullseye. Up to a maximum total weight equal to the items themselves. You can scavenge an item even if it is inoperable. The item you scavenge is permanently destroyed in the process and can never be scavenged again, even by another person. So it's essentially you've ripped all the parts out of it and it's nothing. Nothing's left. Jury rigging. If you can't find the gear you need, you might have to build it for yourself. Some items in this chapter can be jury rigged, if so indicated in the gear list. This includes crude weapons, but also larger items such as stills for distilling fuel, which will be explained later on. Jury rigging an item requires a tech roll, a number of shifts of work, and spare parts as indicated by the item's description. You can try again if you fail. And we have another section on a workshop. If you have access to a workshop with advanced tools, you can build even advanced gear, given time and the right raw materials. And then there's a whole section about that and base building, which should be fun later on. All right, I'm just gonna skip through these. I think for me the important part was I like the idea of scavenging, repairing, fixing kind of items and stuff. And someone had asked in the last chat if they would have rules for building stuff. And yes, here are the rules for building stuff and keeping things in working condition. So I'm really just going to blow by these weapons. We've got beer bottles, knives, axes, bayonets, clubs, spiked bats, machetes, hunting bows, crossbows, improvised bows, revolvers, police pistols, combat pistols, lever action rifles, pipe guns, bolt action rifles, semi-automatic shotguns, pump action shotguns, double barrel shotguns, pipe gun shotguns, zip gun, the M1911A1. So we're getting into military weapons, which are broken down by nationality. You get the M9, M16, M4. I'm just going to keep kind of skipping through, but we could, if you're listening to this, there's a whole bunch of heavier weapons and all kinds of fun military weapons. And if you're watching this, you can look at the pictures and see all the lovely illustrations of weapons of destruction. We got US, we're going to have Soviet ones coming up. What was that? An anti-heavy machine gun. Okay, nice. And we've got RPGs, anti-tank missiles, all kinds of fun stuff. Oh, I skipped right into past the Swedish stuff, and then we got Polish, and then we have some others. I think it's kind of your sort of famous guns of other nationalities, like the FAMAS, FN, FAL, Armbrust, the Uzi, of course. Who couldn't forget the Uzi? And we get some hand grenades and also artillery and mortars and stuff. Now we get to vehicles. We've got some abbreviations: APC for armored personnel carrier, IFV for infantry fighting vehicle, and MBT for main battle tank. All kinds of stuff in here. And they are, again, we're going through military vehicles, and they're pretty much broken down. Well, we have a table with civilian vehicles, from horses and wagons and bicycles to rowboats, sailing boats, and motorboats, including a tugboat. And then we get into military vehicles. Fool's Foil says, I've never heard of Twilight 2000. Anybody feel like gushing about it? Yeah, you probably get a better idea of what it's about, Fool's Foil, if you go back to yesterday's stream. We go through it. If someone in the chat wants to bring Fool's Foil up to speed, that would be awesome. But essentially, it's a pretty gritty sandbox RPG based in a post, or I suppose current, maybe World War III. Pretty much take place anywhere, but there has been some nuclear devastation. The large nation states are broken. Folks are trying to pretty much do what they can to survive. Groups are being rebuilt. New allegiances are being formed. And you, as a player, are kind of dropped into this mix potentially as a combatant, a military combatant for one of the military powers that has crumbled into just units and just smaller fighting forces that might be now autonomous or a civilian, potentially. As Terrence said, Red Dawn the game, not a bad thing. If you think about something like World War Z or Y the Last Man or The Walking Dead, only without the zombie elements, but just in terms of how things have fallen apart, people are just trying to group together however they can and figure out how to survive. That's pretty much the game. Terrence says he's joking, but really, you're not. It's pretty much not a bad thing. I mean, it's not cheesy like Red Dawn, but essentially, it's not inaccurate. I mean, I guess the thing with the Red Dawn, right, it's the fact that the Soviets are attacking. It's not a one power versus one power. It's pretty much every man for themselves. So you think of a Red Dawn situation, but there isn't just invading Soviets. It's basically probably more like those other examples I said. They're probably closer to being on point, just in terms of the fact that it's not nationality versus nationality. It's really every person for themselves trying to group up, trying to make a go of it. The main area the game takes place in by default is Northern and Eastern Europe. So that's why we're getting Poland, the USSR, and Sweden, and then the US representing sort of the mainstay of NATO forces that are in the area. Oh, Nightbot came in and gave Terrence a slap. Don't mess with Nightbot, Terrence. Don't mess with Nightbot. Rules, word for the wise. Do not mess with Nightbot. Do not taunt Nightbot. Nightbot. All right, so we get U.S. military vehicles, the Humvee, the Bradley, the Jeep, the Abrams, and then we get Soviet ones, tanks and personnel carriers. We've got Swedish ones, Polish ones. Then we get some body armor. Fool's Foil missed my whole explanation. Well, I can't help you again. Somebody in chat straighten him out. Or Fool's Foil, just watch part 1 after this. That'll kind of bring you up to speed. Terrence ran afoul of Nightbot's all caps. Yeah, don't go all caps. That's right. Elfbait says, do not look directly at Nightbot. Do not smile at Nightbot. Exactly. Nice callback to Happy Fun Ball. If anybody remembers Happy Fun Ball, who wouldn't? Let's get to some gear here. We got body armor, we got weapons, we get communications gear. They break it up as far as hit locations. So you can be wearing you have different helmets, cover your head. Let's see. Kevlar is better than steel, but costs a whole lot more. Weighs less, costs a bunch more. Flak jackets, plate vests provide different amounts of armor. Because remember, we're rolling for hit locations, so you can be wearing stuff. You can be wearing a jacket, but then you get hit in the head. And if you're not wearing a helmet, well, then your flak jacket didn't help you very much. And you can get telescopic sights, night vision sights, bayonets, bipods, tripods, suppressors. You can also get communications gear. And then listing radios by nationality and also by civilian stuff. You can get signaling gear, observation gear. All kinds of stuff. Medical supplies, tools, and spare parts that we mentioned a minute ago. Fuel and stills, electricity, explosives, food and drink, various field gear. I'm not reading all of these, but I think you get a good sense. Everything you need to go camping during the apocalypse is here. Now we're getting to it. Home base. Twilight 2000 is a game about traveling through the wastelands of World War III, but one day you might find a place safe enough to stay at temporarily or for a longer period of time. This section details how you can establish and develop a home base for your group, but be warned, enemies will come knocking and you'll need to fight to defend what's yours. The rules in this section are intentionally light and abstract. Detailed rules for managing a base or a settlement would result in excessive bookkeeping and slow the game down. These rules are designed to create a base of operations to be used as a backdrop for role-playing. All right, this is stuff that even if I wasn't interested in Twilight 2000 itself, of course I am interested in it, but even if I weren't, these are the kind of things that you might be able to look at and say, hey, I'm not necessarily interested in playing Twilight 2000, but in my other games, certainly in fantasy games, there's a big part of it, which is about creating bases of operations, which might become strongholds, but don't have to be, even just for temporary bases of operations while you're making excursions. If you want to take the Roman military style and build a fort, basically where you're going to be hanging around adventuring, or whether you want to do something else, or whether you want to start, you don't want to take over somebody else's town or village or whatnot. You want to build your own. Well, now we've got it. All right, Elfbait, thanks for filling in Fool's Foil in the chat. First things first, we have to find a base. The first thing you need to do in order to establish a home base is find a suitable location. There are plenty of ruins out there in the wasteland, some even in decent shape, and your best bet is to find some pre-existing structure or building to settle down in. You might be lucky enough to come across empty locations during your travels, or you might need to throw the current occupants out and claim the place as your own. Some examples of locations that might serve as your home base: bomb shelters, bridges underneath, that is, dilapidated mansions, farms, gated communities, junkyards, oil rigs, prisons, shipwrecks, shopping malls, skyscrapers, a small island, subway stations, trailer parks. Yeah, I ended up building a base in my weird Twilight 2000 TSR Marvel Superheroes game that I kind of co-ran and co-played in with a friend of mine. Our base ended up being, I believe it was the Empire State Building, or did we go with the World Trade Center, which it was pre 9/11? I don't remember it. I think it was the Empire State Building, but I could be mistaken. Because I know we were also taking a lot of inspiration from Escape from New York, so it might have been the Twin Towers. Because remember, that's where You see in Escape from New York, that's where Snake Plissken lands his ultralight. Elfbait says, just expect every castle in Europe to be occupied. Yeah. Yeah. You might want to go find a nice castle, but so does everybody else. How long it takes to clean out the location to make it livable is up to the referee, but it typically takes 1 or more shifts and 2 skill rolls. 1 for survival, modified by the quartermaster specialty, and 1 for stamina, modified by builder. Only 1 person can make each roll, but others can help. 1 roll for each skill can be made per shift. Multiple attempts are allowed. So these are definitely very abstract. If you want to role play them going in and clearing something out and cleaning it up, you can. But this is if you want to sort of just, there's nothing really important happening here. There's no organized forces in the place, but you want to impress upon the party the fact that time was spent to do this. And it gives you a way to highlight different people's skill sets. Oh, you've got the quartermaster specialty. Well, you can help out doing this. Oh, you've got the builder specialty. Well, you can direct your people to do this to kind of help. Remember, abstract, kind of simplified, and kind of clean out the base. Oh, Elvie says old World War II bunkers too. Yeah, those would work if you could find them. I imagine those would probably be pretty promptly occupied as well, but you never know. Map of the base. Once you have established a home base, we recommend that you draw at least a simple map of it using the battle map 10-meter hexagons. This will help you visualize the base and run any combat encounters there. Yeah, not a bad idea. Effects of a base. Once you have established your base, it immediately lets you sleep and rest there as long as you want without the need for survival rolls to make camp. That's already a good benefit. We haven't gotten to making camp, but clearly when you're out in the wild, you need to use some skills to get a decent night's rest. If you're in your base, don't have to do it. A home base can be useful in many other ways too, but for that you will need facilities, and those are covered below. Existing facilities. Your home base might already have some useful facilities when you settle into it. You settle in it, it's up to the referee to decide what's reasonable for the site you have settled in. And then there's an upkeep. Each week, you must spend a shift on repairs and general upkeep of the home base and make a stamina roll modified by the builder specialty. Only 1 person can make each roll, but others can help. I think I might stop reading that because I think that's going to be in pretty much all of these rolls. And same thing with this next part. Only 1 roll can be made per shift, but multiple attempts are allowed. So essentially, you can keep rolling until you make it, but the rolling in this case is important. A lot of times you go, well, if we're going to roll until we make it, why don't we just give it to them? And you probably could do that, or you could do something else, like just say, hey, roll a 6-sided. If I was doing this in OSR sense, I might say, okay, we're not going to roll because you're going to clean the thing out, or you're going to do the upkeep. But how long is it going to take you? Roll 1d6. It could be one way to do it. Roll 1d6. And that'll determine how much time you spend, how many hours or shifts, whatever, multiple hours you spend doing that. Now, that's certainly one way to do it. But when you have players who are investing in skills, one of them might say, well, that's fine, but I've got the builder specialty. I think I can do better. And so having them roll for the shifts means that someone with a better stamina or builder specialty is going to tend to make those rolls sooner, so that they'll be faster. And of course, it also demonstrates that if you don't have that specialty, it takes you longer. Let's see. Elfbait in the chat says, I remember we ended up making our base on a large river barge and used the various rivers to Europe in Europe to get around. Oh, that's a really good idea. Terrence. Shopping malls with a blood sport arena in the food court. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you live, your parts are then taken to Panda Express and made in everybody's lunch. Fool's Foil likes the boat idea. I don't think being in rivers all the time would make you too visible, though. The game sounds awesome. I was thinking about getting into that World War II mech game I may just buy. Yeah, I mean, Twilight 2000, Fool's Foil is based on an older game, so this is one that has some heritage from, I guess, I don't know when it first came out, late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there. I haven't played this one yet. I've played the original. It was a lot of fun. If you think your other fellow players would be into this, it is a gritty. It's going to be a lot about that survival. It can be tough. I think they will enjoy it. Not sure what the World War II mech game you're speaking of is, but I think this is good. Elpit says, when we were playing back in the day, it generally came down to joining a community/base or remaining a nomad. Anything worth occupying always seem to have somebody in it. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you either have to then have to build up the personnel. So I think I can imagine you're going to start off as your group of however many players you are, and places you go to are probably going to be occupied, as Elfbait mentioned. You may be able to set up a base by yourself if you get lucky, but you're probably going to want to get in with the community. Then you can maybe take over that community. You could work your way up the food chain. Things are going to happen. Maybe some of the leaders, by hook or by crook, are no longer the leaders, are no longer around, and you can kind of sneak in that way, or just things happen. Or through events in the game, places get cleared out that you can then get away from the group you're in and then break out onto your own and get. But I think my recollections are you kind of need to start to get a crew together. Either you have to build one around yourself or become part of one because, yeah, resources are very, very hard to come by. At least that's my recollection. All right, so we've done existing facilities, we've done upkeep, now encounters. The home base can cause trouble for you, most often in the form of unwanted attention from others in the area. And then we'll have encounters for stationary players that are covered. Well, those covered very early on. But so, yeah, you can. The one thing about having a base is the drawback is, yeah, you are sitting there. You are more visible. You're not on the move. People are more going to tend down to find you. Elfbay says, settling down too early and too small was just asking to get your stuff stolen and yourselves killed. Yep. You got to kind of, that's part of the fun of the game, really, is trying to figure out what strategies you can use to try to get past that opening phase where you really are by yourself and you have pretty much nobody, no allies. A swig of soda for the working man. Facilities. I'm going to breeze through this a little bit, but I like that we have some, even though we're at an abstract level here, we have some. These are the things that I often find in some games where they make it too much of like a, I don't know, like I guess I'm torn because in the fantasy games I tend to be pretty tamped down. I'm not super fantastical, so I'm not the sort that goes, "Oh, you build this tower, and now there's a wizard in the tower, and he just gives you all kinds of magic." I'm more like maybe find the way. I don't know. Like sometimes I find. I guess what I'm saying is sometimes I find the fantasy games that your base building becomes this weird mini game that kind of throws away a lot of the, and not so much the abstraction, but maybe a lot of the what I don't know, whatever quote unquote realism you want to throw. It becomes like, oh, you just get this and you get this permanent effect. I'm curious to see how they do the facilities. Looking at the names, they definitely make sense in terms of what you're doing and then what you're getting. So, for example, we have a cow pen, room for one cow. Once per day, the cow can be milked. This takes a shift and gives 2d6 rations of domestic food. Slaughtering a cow takes a shift and yields 2d6 times 6 rations of domestic food. You should cook the meat before eating it. You must make a stamina roll to resist food poisoning. And to make this, you need basic tools. You need a cow, stolen or bought. Takes a day, and it's a building skill. These are all perfectly reasonable. And I like the fact that you have to kind of choose between, you can milk it. So one, they're not, well, so on the abstract level, they're not telling you, hey, you're getting a milk cow or you're getting a bull or whatever you're getting. It's just, cow. Your generic cow, presumably is female since you're getting milk out of it. And then it gives you some, that milk becomes essentially rations for you. Or you can slaughter the cow, you get a bunch more rations, but you should cook it. And if you don't cook it, you might get food poisoned, but of course, you then got rid of your cow. And then we've got the next one is cropland. A plot of land is set aside for the organized cultivation of grain, corn, turnips, radishes, or other vegetables. For each bullseye rolled when you harvest harvest in the fall, the yield is D6 times 100 units of wild food. So it looks like we have different types of food. They're talking about domestic food. Here we have wild food. You need the plot of land, you need some basic tools. Takes you a week to just get it ready, then one shift per week in the spring and summer to tend it, and then 1 week to harvest in the fall. So that's definitely a long-term plan. It's not, oh, now you have a cropland, so you just magically get new rations every week. Nope, you're going to have to do this for months and months, and then you'll get one lump sum returned for the for your labors, if you're so lucky. Terrence says, wild milk the cow when you can get the jerky for free. Something like that. Interesting, there was not given I wonder if that's just, I guess we would say in lieu of cooking it, you could, if you knew how to dry it and smoke it, you could do that too. But then I think that takes months also. I guess it depends on how you want to do your food. If you want to just eat meat while it's hot, and, meat's back on the menu, boys. Or whether you want to, what was it? Snap into a Slim Jim. Oh, yeah. Kind of thing. That was a terrible Macho Man impression. I apologize. I apologize to all that heard that. Not good. Not good at all. You can build defenses. Walls, palisades, or earthworks offer defensive positions with cover with armor level 3 or higher. Basic tools takes a day per hex. And you need a couple of skills on this one. Builder and tactician. You build a heater, an infirmary, a garage, a generator, a lookout point, a pigsty, prison cells, a boot cellar. Root cellar, which is for storing your domestic food, and a shrine. So what does it say about the shrine? If you're a religious person and spend a shift here, you recover an additional point of stress. Can only be used once per day. That's kind of nice. If you kept your faith through a nuclear apocalypse, you can get some extra stamina back by going to the shrine. There you go. Terrence says, as long as you can find other survivors, meat's always on the menu. Yeah, you could be that. God, what was the name of that movie? There was a movie a long time ago with Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale about the dragons. I really like that movie. I know it's another movie I think that got kind of much maligned for reasons that were, I don't want to say beyond its control, but just not really new to the movie itself. But yeah, they had that bit with all these kind of weird folks coming up and potential cannibals and all that stuff in the post-dragon apocalypse. Elpit says, surviving the war-torn apocalypse got you down. Yeah, exactly. Rain of Fire, Walking the Path. Thank you. Rain of Fire. Yep, I really like that movie. Put that down on the list of movies that got a bad rap for one reason or another. Deserves to be more well-known, more treasured. All right, so we got the shrine, we got the well, we have a windmill, and a workshop. Workshop gives you a modifier, a +1 modifier to all tech rolls for repairs, except on vehicles. You need a garage for that one, which I think I just kind of ran through earlier. It can also be used for construction. Elpate says, remove the dragons from that, and it is a good Twilight 2000 movie. Yes. Oh, Walking the Path says, I love that jump with the axe. Yeah, I won't, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to do the spoilers, but yes, there is a cool moment involving jumping and axes. That's fun. That's true, Elfane. If you did remove, if you did remove the dragons, it probably would do a fairly good approximation. These guys managed to find a castle to hang out in. Yeah. Or Darren says, or add dragons to Twilight 2000. Twilight 2000 plus. The plus is for dragons. Yeah. I could see it going either way. All right, construction. I feel like this is going to be interesting. In a garage and a workshop, you can do more than just repair. You can also build vehicles and other mechanical gear, including weapons and ammunition. This goes beyond jury rigging and means you can manufacture most items found in the gear chapter given the given time, skill, and raw materials in the form of spare parts. Generally, a difficult tech roll is required to manufacture an item in a garage or workshop, with a bonus from the blacksmithing specialty as well as gunsmith, mechanic, electrician, or chemist as appropriate. If the roll succeeds, you complete the item with a reliability rating 2 points lower than the quote-unquote original, down to a minimum of 1, +1 for each bullseye rolled beyond the first to a maximum of the original reliability. The reliability rating achieved during manufacturing is the maximum for the item. The requirements and time and materials to manufacture an item vary immensely, but some general guidelines follow below. And then we get some guidelines for weapons. I'm just not going to go through these, but basically we get kind of what raw materials or what spare parts we need in terms of for different types of weapons. So pistols just require 1 weapon part. Shotguns require 1 general part and 1 weapon part, so on and so forth. Ammunition requires general spare parts and explosives in equal weight. So 1 general part per 1 part explosives. Vehicles require 2 general parts, 2 vehicle parts. Dirt bikes, 25 general parts, 25 vehicle parts, 1 electronic part, and then they go on from there, scaling up from pickup trucks, APCs, etc., etc. Okay. Brian Smith. I already missed the Rain of Fire chat. Yep. Wasn't too much of a chat, but it was good while it lasted. Glad to see that folks are such fans of Rain of Fire. Elfman said, Add Vampires becomes a very cringy version of Twilight 2000. Yeah, that would be. I got my head for movies is going down the toilet. But yeah, that put it in Alaska. Have some guy named Edward, but make the school bombed out, and yeah, I could. That would be bad. That would be bad. What was it? Twilight? That would be a different Twilight, right? Twilight 2000. Twilight 2000. Yeah, yoinks. No, thank you. But everyone would have their shirt off for some reason. I don't know why. Or all the guys, anyway. All right, we're on to travel. Here's our meat and potatoes. Terrence says, Twilight 2000, the Sparkle Apocalypse. Is that, yeah, that's Sparkle Apocalypse sounds like it would happen when if Sparkle Motion from Donnie Darko ended up taking over the world somehow. Maybe that was the big event that he had to stop. It wasn't just the plane crash. It was the fact that Sparkle Motion was suddenly going to go, go Terminator and take over the world. You stopped Cyberdyne Systems, but you didn't stop Sparkle Motion. All right, travel. I used to have this dream where I was floating down the Vistula with all my classmates. We were all zen-like quiet and serene as the river towed us toward what eventually was a waterfall, 100 kilometers high, I swear, and then all of us fell off the edge into the rainbow made by the mist. These people were just dead, but they reminded me of my dream. They slipped by under the bridge we crossed, all of them ice blue from the winter, but their eyes open to the slate-colored sky. They floated down the river peacefully, having, I think, been gassed in a max execution. I didn't even get sick this time, which made me sick in and of itself. I'm getting used to this. That's the danger. You don't want to get too used to that. It's a pretty vivid image. Pretty vivid image. In the world of Twilight 2000, safe havens are few and far between and rarely remain safe for long. To stay alive, you need to keep moving. Traveling, whether on foot or by vehicle, is a key part to most Twilight 2000 campaigns. We looked at the travel maps the other day when I did the unboxing. So we got that already. To regulate journeys across the devastated Europe of World War III, you use a travel map. Map is divided into hexagons, which are used to measure distances and govern movement. One hexagon is 10 kilometers across. So their hexes are 10 kilometers. I don't know the kilometer to mile exchange. I want to say it's like 2.2 kilometers to the mile, something like that. So is that around a 6-mile hex? Is 6 miles equivalent to 10 kilometers? Can't be too far off, right? Because, I don't know. Somewhere in there. Relatively close. City maps. Traveling inside large cities is handled somewhat differently using maps with a smaller scale. See the section on city travel at the end of this chapter. I will do that, sir. We get to terrain types. We have roads, rivers, open terrain, woods, hills, mountains, swamps, and ruins. There you go, Brian Smith says. All right. Now I get to learn how far my post-apocalyptic Nissan Altima can go before I need to share my gin with the gas tank. Indeed. We will see how far we can get that Altima to go. Where to go? In a sandbox game like Twilight 2000, you might find yourself asking the question, where should we go? The answer to this is very much up to yourself and your campaign. The referee will give you enough information to go on. At least we hope they will. Nearby enemies to flee from or points of interest to investigate. More information about this can be found in the referee's manual. So just reiterating, it's a sandbox. You kind of have to figure out for yourself where you want to go. The referee's going to tell you all kinds of things around you, but it's going to work best if you have some places that you have some goals, right? Going back to that goals part. You need goals because goals are pretty much going to tell you where you want to go to. Tasks and shifts of the day. During travel, the day is divided into 4 shifts of roughly 6 hours each: morning, day, evening, and night. Okay, I actually have something similar. I feel like these guys read my mind, or maybe I read their mind, since I'm pretty sure they wrote this and typeset it before I started fiddling it together in my own brain. But it's pretty darn similar. Terrence says, I will friggin' walk before I share my last bottle of post-nuke gin. Yeah, I'm telling you, it depends on the gin, right? If it's some kind of swill, maybe just put in the tanks. But what if it's a nice... And here you will want to insert your name of a good gin, because I don't know anything about gin in this space. Might be better off walking. Let somebody else have that car. Let some of the crazies have that car. I don't need it and I don't want it. All right, tasks. At the start of every shift, each member of your group must decide what they will do for most of that shift. You cannot perform more than one task in the same shift, including marching. The only exception to this is that one PC may keep watch while marching. Some tasks can be performed by several of the characters at the same time. For other tasks, a single character must be chosen. And we're going to hear what those tasks are. So we have marching, driving, gathering, keeping watch, scrounging, foraging, hunting, fishing, making camp, cooking, resting, sleeping, and exploring. Let's see. And no, Terrence mentions Hendrick's gin, and LP says that gin's going to the medic. Excuse me. All right. I think the key thing we're here for tasks. Most tasks you can send more than one person to do. Well, there might be a task that only one person can do. You can only do one task at once. So if you're driving, you have to just be driving. If you're marching, you can only be marching. I think the one is that anybody keeping watch can keep watch while you march. Everything else you kind of got to do. So if you're going to then do some hunting and gathering, you have to keep put in that area while you're doing that. If you are, let's see, if you are scrounging for stuff, yeah, foraging, hunting, that sort of fishing. If you're cooking, if you're resting, if you're sleeping, exploring, right? So if you have some area around you want to explore, then you're staying put in that area. You cannot explore while you're traveling. Light and darkness. The time of day determines the level of light which affects... Come on, get rid of that. Get out of there. Thank you. The time of day determines the level of light which affects visibility in most of the world. The morning and day shifts are generally considered daylight, while the evening and night shifts are dark, with visibility depending on moonlight and cloud cover. Only a short period at the end of each morning and evening shift are considered dusk. However, at higher latitudes, such as the Nordic region, the seasons have a great impact on light levels, and the dusk lasts for entire shifts. See the table below for guidance. And I suppose you don't have to do this if you want to. I've actually thought about this in my travel rules, how much I want to get into seasonal changes in the amount of daylight you have. Feels like maybe it's a touch too far, though I suppose your party might decide, hey, it's August, the sun's out till 9, let's push it. But I think in terms of travel, there's also the fact as well, you have the light, you don't have the energy. And then sometimes you have the energy, but you don't have the light. So you just kind of, in terms of your days over the year, it becomes kind of a wash. But interesting that they do give it to you. And having visited, I went to Iceland once over New Year's, or we actually arrived New Year's Day and stayed for, it wasn't a week, but maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days. Yeah, it was dark till like 11. And it felt like it was getting dark again at 3. It was really interesting. That was certainly the most northerly I've ever been. Weather. The weather, particularly cloud cover and rain, can limit visibility and affect ranged combat. The referee decides the current weather when the campaign starts, and then rolls a d6 base die at the start of each shift, or less often if they prefer. On a explosion, the weather changes 1 step toward rain. On a bullseye, the weather changes 1 step toward fair. Well, that's kind of a cool way to do it. Fair weather, maximum visibility in darkness is 10 combat hexes, 15 with strong moonlight. Cloudy, Cloud cover reduces visibility during the dark shifts of the day to 5 combat hexes, 50 meters. So 10 combat hexes is 100. So it's 10 meters a combat hex. So, excuse me. So from 50 meters. So we went from 100 meters in fair weather, 50 meters cloudy weather, heavy rain or snow. You're down to what? Well, first you get some negative modifiers. And then it doesn't say what the, 20 combat hexes. Wait a minute. Limits visibility to 20, but cloudier limits visibility to 10 to 5? Maybe they mean 20 meters? I gotta think it's gotta be a typo. I have to think that heavy rain and snow reduces visibility more than just being cloudy. That would be my imagination. I would guess that I'm gonna say, maybe I'll have to make a little note here. I'm going to add a little sticky note. Can I move that? Typo. Can I move this? All right, now this portion of the video of the stream is fun with Acrobat. All right, I guess I'll just have to leave it there. In any case, I want to say it's got to be a typo. Typos get through everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just the grassroots stuff. Is the affliction that knows no boundaries. Marching. If you have no vehicle to travel in, you'll need to walk on foot across the nuclear wastelands. Under good circumstances, you can march 2 hexes per shift on a road or in open terrain. Off-road in any terrain type except open, you can march 1 hex per shift. So you lose a lot by going off-road in terms of your pathing. So 2 hexes per shift. So remember, we have 4 shifts in the day. So if you spend your morning and day marching, that's 4 hexes or 2 hexes if you're talking about marching all day long. I believe that is correct. And we have a note here about making your own maps. I'm not going to read it, but hey, if you need to, make your own maps. We get interruptions. You need to spend most of a shift on a specific activity for it to count, but the referee should allow some interruptions as a result of encounters and other events. As a rule of thumb, you spend at least 3/4 of the shift on your chosen activity. You gain the benefits from it. The referee has final say. This is kind of similar to that. Hey, I think 5th edition, I don't know, 5th edition has some weird rules about this that don't entirely make sense, but basically, if it's less than if a shift is 4 or 6 hours, if you spend more than 4, if you spend 4 or more hours basically on the shift, then you get the benefit. Or you can even say 5 and 6 if you want to do that kind of. I think 5th edition has something like there's an hour, they put an hour on it or something like that, but why I say it doesn't quite make sense at 5th edition is because things like combat are so short that it ends up being something like you could still have, 10, 20 combats in your thing and still get full rest. Like it probably could be worked a little differently. But it's not really trying to be gritty either. So, it's not its fault. Anyway, you got to spend 3/4 of the shift on something. You can sidetrack yourself a little bit, but if you sidetrack too far, you lose the benefit of your work, of putting in the time. So we have weather, we have darkness, encounters. Short breaks are included in the travel speeds on the list, but if you stop for more than a few minutes along the way because of an encounter or something else, you will not be able to travel the entire distance during the shift. The referee has the final word on how many hexes of movement you lose when stopping for an encounter. So there you go. So they made a specific rule here about, hey, you get into combat, that does affect your travel time. It's not just, because it's less than whatever. It's like it never happened. Nope, it happened. You're going to have to deal with it. You can force march. You can march for 2 of the 4 shifts of the day without a problem. If you need to, you can push yourselves and march a 3rd shift in a single day. This requires that each of you make a stamina roll. Failure means you're unable to march during the shift. Instead, you must rest or sleep. If your stamina roll succeeds, you can choose to leave any stragglers behind and split up the group or stay and wait for them. Ooh, split up the group. What a fine idea in a game like Twilight 2000. You slowpokes, you stay here. We're going to move on. I'm sure it'll all go fine. It'll be swell. Yeah, I'd like to be a fly on the wall in the game where they did that. See what happens. Driving. All characters assume to be able to drive cars, trucks, motorcycles, even tracked vehicles under normal circumstances. The vehicle lists that we saw earlier indicate maximum travel speeds in 10-kilometer hexes per shift. 2 separate rates are given, one for traveling off-road and one for traveling on-road. If the listed speed for off-road travel is a dash, the vehicle cannot be driven off-road at all. Normally, you will choose on-road or off-road driving for a full shift, but the referee can allow splitting a shift in half at their discretion. Yeah, I would probably say, unless you're really comfortable with the math or you don't mind, just do full shifts. But saying half shift at least doesn't make the math too bad. I think that's that same thing I get into when I talk to people about turns, either in the dungeon or turns in the wilderness. About, look, it doesn't matter how long something takes in the real world for purposes of the abstractions, these mechanics. You just say it takes a turn. Because if you start putting numbers on it, then people will start to wheedle or they'll want to do all kinds of stuff. It's like, you know what, we're just playing abstract. Sometimes it's going to work for you. Sometimes it's going to work against you. You deal with it. So in this case, yeah, if you don't want to get into, but we only went 100 feet off trail, or we only went this much on trail. Now we're on road. Now we're off road, or vice versa. Just shift or half shift, and anything else is just, you just chalk it up to the wash. Elfbait says, good modern tactics often involve splitting up to achieve a good tactical position. This is true, but the reasons when you're making those splits is not because one part is too slow. I mean, that's not the only thing. Yes, there's things like, hey, we have the cavalry or something are going to do cavalry things, and that requires speed. They have infantry are slow, so we're going to do that. But in this case, you're not making that choice based on some tactical consideration of all our heavy infantry are here, so we're going to line them up, and then we're going to try to do something Hannibal-esque and maybe draw the opponents into our heavy infantry centers and then have these other wings come out and crush them from the sides. This is just, we're splitting up willy-nilly based on simply speed. But yes, of course, you can do tactical things. Elfbay says, oh, whoops, missed the context. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, the context was you're just tired. These guys are tired, so they're just going to stop. You're going to keep going. It's kind of like that. You know, if you're on Mount Everest and you're feeling tired and you're telling people, I'll catch up. You know, you're not going to catch up. You're going to be one of those bodies left to the side, you know, so don't stop moving. Elfbay's working on game prep while listening. I think you mentioned that before. Cool. My game tonight is 2, but obviously, as you can see, I am not prepping. I mean, they still have decisions to make, so I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about having to have a lot prepped. I don't feel like I'm going to need a lot of content tonight. And plus, I imagine that actually reading this is going to give me ideas. It already has given me ideas. All right, so this was driving encounters. It's kind of similar to walking or marching. Terrain when driving off-road. Difficult terrain can reduce your speed. You got stuff for driving at night. We have mishaps, fuel, and stills. Vehicles still need fuel to operate. The list in Chapter 5, which is what the gear chapter, indicate each vehicle's fuel capacity and fuel consumption. Off-road fuel consumption is doubled. And then we have a table of driving mishaps if we need them. Ooh, Elfate says heist goes down tonight. Ooh, good luck with that. Heists. Oh, gotta love a good heist. Actually, even a bad heist. Alcohol, fuel, stills. Now we have horses. In game terms, horses count as vehicles for the purposes of combat. Typical horse can carry a rider, including carried gear, plus 25 encumbrance points of additional load, or a second person if you instead lead it by the halter. Oh, or a second person, period. If you instead lead it by the halter, the horse can carry up to 50 encumbrance units. We haven't really looked at encumbrance units, or I might have gone past it. I think I might have gone past that. I think it's just more important at that time that I just want to say, hey, it's got encumbrance rules, but I didn't go into them in detail. We have a section on keeping watch. Let's see, we have a little note here on I am cognizant of getting to the end of the time, so I'm trying to just hit the main parts of this. I'm not sure how much is left of this chapter. But if you have an encounter during watch, you can back off. If you back off from an encounter without being spotted, you can circle around it off-road. This will cost you an additional hex of off-road movement modified by terrain before you can continue forward. That's cool, though, because it does give you this option of, it's just I mean, granted, in your normal hex crawl, you could just say, okay, here we go around. But, right, we're sort of hand waving the directionality of it. All we really want to know is you got past the obstacle. We don't particularly care. This isn't about getting lost. So it's just, we got around. So just saying, hey, you can say you back off and went around, and we'll just simply, it'll give you a cost, and then we can just stay abstract without having to start thinking about on the map where you move to, yada, yada, yada. If you travel on a motor vehicle and the group you encounter is on foot, you get a -2 to the recon roll to spot the encounter. If you are all inside an armored vehicle with the hatches closed, you will automatically fail the roll. If you are on foot while the encounter group is motorized, you get a +2. If both groups are in vehicles, roll normally. Whoops. And we get an example. Then we get some scrounging, which is just basically a survival roll. We get foraging for finding, scrounging for finding parts. Oops, excuse me. Foraging for finding provisions. Just keep bouncing into things. Whoa, we got like the massive table of stuff. Everything from alarm clocks to instant coffee to iron pipes to teddy bears to wine bottles to broken wristwatches. Oh, a nice touch. On a roll of 97s, this is a D100 table. On the roll of 97, you find a yellowed copy of Twilight 2000 RPG First Edition. Oh, that is awesome. I would totally keep that as an heirloom if I found that in the game. And we can go hunting. Got some modifiers for your season, for seasonality. How fast does a horse travel while driving a tank? That's a good question. And what happens if you hook the horse up to the tank? Does it make the tank go faster? So we've got some foraging modifiers for different seasons. We have a table of animals: grouse, rabbit, fox, deer, boar, moose. Grouse require a shotgun. And basically about how much food you get. And we have some camp mishaps. Food spoils, you get flooded, your fire dies, or it goes out of control. You get ants, you get lice. Yuck. Mosquito swarms, a savage animal. Some gear gets lost or some gear gets broken. And then we've got, cooking, resting, sleeping, exploring. City travel looks like it's going to be something that's going to come up in an expansion. They just, basically the big thing is they use a different measurement for the hex maps. City maps use a 1 kilometer hex. But it's treated like a 10 kilometer hex just because of traffic obstructions, yada, yada, yada. If you do happen to have a barge and you're on a European waterway, you can use water travel. Oh, you can even, wow, it even mentions going across the ocean. So I guess you could sail out into the sea, open sea. Sea travel works like land travel. Passengers can rest or even sleep as long as they don't keep watch, fish, or perform some of their action. And they do have some boat types. Oh, look at that. Well, wham, just in time. That is the end of as I'm scrolling back, end of the player's manual. Yeah, we made it. Oh, come on. Come on, Acrobat. Don't mess up me now. I'm just trying to get back to I don't know if there's a shortcut for me to go back. Anyhow, awesome. So that is all the stuff that is in, there we go, in the player's manual. Brian Smith says, that would be interesting to see the travel mechanics through a bombed, ruined urban environment. Yeah, I'm guessing that's going to come in some expansion. I would imagine a module or adventure campaign that takes place in a European or American city, or it could be somewhere else, would make a lot of sense. Yeah, it would definitely be interesting. At least what we see, I guess, are popular mental pictures of city streets with, bombed out vehicles and makeshift barricades and all kinds of stuff. You could see it going a lot of different ways. Escape from New York, again, has a nice sort of, doesn't go super detailed in it, but you get to see a sense of what that might look like. Of course, any movies that is taking place in the recent way where they might be inside a urban war zone would give you good ideas, but there it is. Anywho, that is Twilight 2000 Player's Manual. We will end part 2 here, right at the bottom of the hour. could not have been better timing. If you don't mind, if you give a thumbs up to the video on your way out, that would be awesome. If you were in here and you're not subscribed and you like the way these things go, I do it most weekdays. So if you subscribe, you will get notified when the next one will come. Probably, I'm guessing what we'll do is get into the referee's manual tomorrow. And then Friday, I will pause, depending on, seeing how far we get, but I'll pause to do my regularly scheduled says my glasses are falling off. My regularly scheduled OSR Reddit roundup. Have a great day, night, whenever you're watching or listening to this. Game on. Talk to you later, everybody.